Okay, good evening everyone. Wish you all a happy new year. I hope you had a good time, and we will be logically closing the loop that we started. Like I began the culture as a theme because of the expectation that it would yield some good results this time, because this theme has been recurring in previous year questions. So since I thought I would pick up environment again, but then there is a small topic that is left. I thought I'll close the loop so that your history is closed. So in today's class, you will notice that there are a list of articles that are in news. They might be scattered, so we will try to create some sense of coherence so that it will become easier for you to remember them. Let's start with the first news, that is, see, it will involve a lot of, me reading the text on the slide here, unlike every day, because I want you to focus on the logic that UPSC might use to twist it. So we are not just trying to summarize the news from newspapers, we are looking at it from a standpoint of how we have to connect it to our history textbooks, whether it is your NCRT or the Tamil Nadu textbook or any standard reference that you take. So at every point, I'll try to do the same thing, like a sense of comparison. Okay. So the first news is about Rakhigarhi. Where is Rakhigarhi, guys? And why is it really important? Now, it is actually the largest Harappan site. It is actually larger than Mohenjo-daro also. In India, Indian side of the IBC sites, this is the largest. So recently, what happened was a DNA evidence was found at this place. Okay, so this is the biggest takeaway. Like, this is the first DNA evidence that you found from this place. We were not able to extract DNA in the previous archaeological sites, so much so that we were not clearly able to establish the linkage to the people outside. So this site's evidence actually clearly establishes that there were no migrants, there are indigenous people within the country, because there is no link between the, let's say, Asian DNA and the DNA that we found here. So what are the points that you need to know? You have to note them down. Like, I would prefer that you finish writing it here in the class, because this will be like a quick revision note. And just write down specific keywords only. Don't write down the entire news, because it will be difficult for revising. So the news item number 1 is Rakhigarhi. Just write down Rakhigarhi. Where? First point, where? Haryana. Present day Haryana. Okay. So you would notice that there is no Central Asian ancestry. The point that you need to write down is no DNA evidence linking to Central Asia. These facts are supposed to be memorized. These will be the distractors in your question options. So using these facts only, you will have to eliminate the options. Anyway, no foreign DNA. That's what you can write down. If you have to create your own interesting short notes, how would you do it, guys? Like, what is the purpose of a short note? Is it like to summarize everything, or help you remember what you might be forgetting? So there are no rules for short note making. Let's say, for example, again, this is not just for this class, but for every class. Let's say you are in your note writing a short note. In that short note, let's say, for example, if I were writing this, okay, Rakhigarhi, what I would rather do is, on India map, let's say, put it here. Then no foreign DNA Desi. For example, I'm using my own language like this here. What do you mean by Desi here? Only I will understand. You don't have to understand, but this word will trigger a thought that we are not talking about DNA evidence. I don't have to write down Rakhigarhi DNA evidence as my heading. Okay. So I'm just giving you an example of how to write your own short notes for prelims especially, because all we have to do is trigger a memory for quicker recall. Whatever facilitates that quicker recall, that should be your short note. And one more thing, never write lengthy notes. That is counterintuitive because the word itself indicates that you have to keep it short. So while you are preparing in the class itself, you have to think, how can you write this as a short note? Now the next point is, there are evidences of jewelry workshops, standardized weights, and sophisticated state regulated economy. So this is written on the slide. If state regulation is there, how will you prove it? Okay. So what will trigger this question in your mind if you write in the short note? So this is supposed to be a class not just for short note making on history, but in general, this is the kind of thinking I would want you to deploy. This might be a random list of facts, but I just don't want this class to be only for fact collection. You should also learn one more skill for prelims. That is, let it be short note making. Now I'm asking you, if you have to remember this point, industrial prowess, where we witnessed state's presence, like there is a government there. If you have to recollect this point, how will you put it in your notes? I just want to hear it from you. Will you directly write down government present, or what will you do? So you can say standardization. Is this enough? STD, standardization, weight, jewels. Is this enough for you? Or would you like to write something else in your short notes? See, if I were writing, I would put it this way. What would you do? That's up to you to decide. So, short notes is very personal, because just like how we were talking about our suffering is very personal, the solution should also be personal, right? This is how I would put it. How would you put it? Please think about it. Now, these are the 3 points that you have to focus. As a point of comparison, you are taking a look at Rakhigarhi and Mohenjo-daro because this is the often cited comparison in our newspapers. If I have to see the primary material, take a look at this baked brick. So if we are using baked bricks, what does it indicate? Some element of planning is there. Here, mud brick. So in terms of comparison, maybe we are looking at a more sophisticated city there when compared to this. That's what probably you can infer. Take a look at the most unique selling point of that particular site. On one hand, you have DNA. On the other hand, what do you find in Mohenjo-daro? From a cultural standpoint, dancing girl or the great bath. So it's like a quick revision of your static. Site, important point, it is the largest in India. And here, the most important point is, you can see the flagship nature of this site. Like whenever you think of Indus Valley civilization, you will think of Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, because of the prominence they have or the number of archaeological findings that site created. So this is how you would create the short note. So quickly to sum up, what would be there in your short note? Think of it and write down just for a couple of minutes, because this is an activity that you will have to do for every subject. whenever you are talking about memory and recollection, you will have to anchor it around one logic. Okay. So, firstly, you should have the ability to map things on a timeline. If that is also a problem to you, you will have to go back to your basics. See, you are not supposed to make notes of your timeline. That should be, it's like A for apple when you are reading history. If that is also going into your short notes, maybe that is exactly not short notes. Clear? Now, what is the importance of this second site that is in news, Keeladi? Anybody? See, right now there is a political controversy surrounding Indus Valley civilization's connection with southern part of the country. So, what is an older civilization? Is it the Sangam age era or the Indus Valley civilization? Or is there a historical continuity from IVC to Keeladi? This has been the debate. So, on one hand, we have people who claim that the Tamil Nadu region or the southern part of the country, to be very precise, is much more older than the northern part. That's the claim. But we need some um, architectural evidences, right? If not, I'm sorry, archaeological evidences, right? This site is providing that archaeological evidences. So, the recent excavations in Tamil Nadu at a place called Keeladi is basically mapping the origin of this entire era to 600 BC, much more older than what we had imagined it to be. So, the points that you need to take away from this news is point number one. Firstly, carbon dating. What is the first urbanization in entire Indian history? Sorry? Harappa. IVC. That is the first urbanization. What is the civilization? What is the meaning of the word civilization? Okay. How do you know it has a culture? Yes, there is a sophisticated organization of the society and a written script. It's a different thing that we could not decipher the Harappan script, but given the fact that we have a script, we found an evidence of the script. It is given the status of civilization along with, of course, the material culture that developed around it. Now, if you take a look at the second phase of urbanization, in our common understanding, what is the second phase of urbanization in India? Mahajanapadas, right? Why is it the second phase of urbanization? Why is it called, like, what transpired to create those conditions for urbanization in that time period? Iron. Okay. What did they do with iron? Basically, the valley part, which was conducive for intensive, like very extensive agricultural tracts and creating that agricultural surplus, that was facilitated by iron. So that's how they explained it. And what does the word IAS mean in ancient texts? Krishna IAS. What is it called? Iron. So because of that, they were able to carry out mining, they were able to cut down forests. That's how civilization grew. That also explains the rise of Magadhan Empire with Patliputra as the capital, the richness that is associated with that region, the agricultural surplus, and also there are other factors to why Magadhan Empire became such a huge kingdom. One of them being the use of elephants in the army, military strategies. But much before that, there were regional federations One of that federation is the birthplace of Gautam Buddha. Okay, so it is in this region, the geography, science, and culture together transpired into that so-called urbanization phase. This was the claim till now. But this discovery is challenging that. It's not just unique to the northern part of the country, it's a possibility that this idea existed and we are corroborating that with carbon dating. So this is the link. See, this is a backstory. You are not going to write down all these points in your short notes. What would you write? A trigger that would put this on the same pedestal as Mahajanapadas. So in your notes, when you are preparing here, you should, let's say for example, you know Mahajanpada period. If you are writing a historical timeline, let's say this is timeline. So in your notes, let's say if you're forgetting the timeline itself, at the timeline part, let's say if this is IVC and you're putting Mahajanpada period here, you should also place it on same pedestal. This is how a visual cue will trigger that memory. Okay, let's move forward. Now, take a look at this. There are evidences of industrial kilns and beads, but there are no religious shrines that were found in this region. So, this indicates that there was no, this indicates industrialization. So, if you are having anthropology optional or history optional, you would notice the significance of any ritual practices or any material evidence that would explain their cultural aspects. If you don't find that, you would just focus on the economic aspects. So, in this Keeladi side, you would see that as of now, there was no evidence of any religious practices. So, that's what you should focus on. Next, there was a Tamil Brahmi script on common pottery which indicates a widespread literacy among traders. How did you arrive at that logic? What does pottery have to do with literacy and trade? So, but what does it have to do with trade? Think of it. Exactly. If you take a look at the scientific advancements, they all pass through, like even when you're talking about the LPG reforms, you will say that we have to pass through agriculture, then industrialization, then services, right? Why did agricultural surplus become an object of trade? It's because of one scientific invention. Can you tell me what that is? Wheel. Because of wheel, pottery came into existence. Because of pottery, storage became possible, and storage facilitated trade. And if something was engraved on trade related items, or let's say seals or pots, anything, it indicates the culture of that region. It either tells us about the government or it tells us about the literacy or the cultural aspect of that particular region. From that logic, they have extrapolated it and said that there is a literacy among sense of literacy among traders. Now take a look at this Tamil Brahmi. What does it mean? What is the difference between a language and a script? Let's say, what is the script here? Like English, is this script English? Then what does this mean? What is the script here? Then here, is this a script? Is the language changing? Is the sound changing? No. The script is changing. So you will get questions on script and language. So you might be, casually reading all of these points. What is the difference between script and language? Like, say, for example, I'll just write down all the words that you can think of. Prakrit, Pali, Brahmi, Ardhamagadi, uh, in this list, what is script? What is language? What is the script? Devanagari. So let's say when Ashokan inscriptions are found in northwest part of the country, let's say in the Afghanistan, Pakistan region, what is the likely language and script? Aramaic script and language? Is it Sanskrit? Something that is close to the western part of the world. What would you likely find here? Because you want the people to read that, right? If I write it in English at that point of time, do you think they'll understand? No. If I write in let's say Hindi script or like Devanagari script, they won't understand. So one major MCQ pointer is UPSC can confuse you with script and language. So please revise that points once again. Whenever you are trying to understand what language is important in what region, also pay attention to the script if the details are present. Because that indicates the geographical culture. Why is Aramaic script preferred? Why are they changing the script in the first place? It's because people can't read it. They must be accustomed to a certain, style or certain script. If you are giving subtitles, the sound doesn't change, the meaning doesn't change. But the way that it is written will definitely change. Maybe this name has an equivalent even in the Harappan script. If it is ever deciphered, maybe we will also be able to write that name in this. Right? So know the difference between script and language. Do you have any language that doesn't have a script? There are many languages, not just one. What is the danger of that? So, anthropology students, you should tell me what is the importance of script? See, every second, third person in Hyderabad is an anthropology student. So, you should tell me. Why is script important in anthropology? Think of these lines. Like, we'll get back to the topic anyway. So, next. Where is Vaiga River? Tamil Nadu. Is it in Chennai? Madurai. Okay. So, if a river is south of that region and you're talking about a site, can you visually imagine where this site is more likely to be? Is it to the side of Chennai or south of Chennai? South of Chennai. So when you're reading something, I want you to have that visual mindset. And you should be curious. You should be slow. It's not like you're trying to by heart something. You have to observe every fact. You can't consume, even if it is a small paragraph, the devil is always in the detail. And if you lose out on that detailing part, you are not going to develop this interconnections and logic when you're preparing for the. See, it's just the second topic, but so many questions came up. If you were just by hearting the information, do you think it would be natural for you to ask these questions? No. It will take time, and it should take time, and it's okay. Please remember that. Now, take a look at this comparison. Why are we comparing with Magadha? We are saying it's more or less on the similar timelines, right? So let's see. Over a period of time, what legacy did they leave? For example, over a period of time, you would notice, I'm not saying that they had viharas, etc. at that point of time. I'm just saying that they left a cultural legacy after a point of time. So simultaneously, they did not leave any cultural legacy. They left a cultural legacy. What does it tell you about this region? Why do you think temples, viharas, stupas, etc. were not found in this region? Maybe there are two explanations. Maybe we are yet to find those evidences. Maybe they were existing, but we don't know. Or two, as far as the logic that is given in newspapers that we did not find any religious sites, it just means that we didn't have any patrons, or organized religion may not be a dominant thought at that point of time in this region. Maybe that's what I meant. Like, either the evidence is not there, maybe there was no patronage, maybe there was absence. Like, it's a possibility that there is no organized religion at that point of time. But having said that, across the world, if you see the prehistoric findings also, let's say even in our what is that, Himachal Pradesh, Lakudiyar, Uttarakhand, if I'm not wrong, like even the prehistoric sites had that paintings of some sort of an organized community, or some, in the western part of the world, some sense of religion, or let's say nature worship. So if you always found solace in a supernatural power, don't you think it's a possibility that this trend would exist here also? Maybe the evidence. Who is the most culturally prominent king at that point of time? Ashoka. Let's say I'll distract you with that. Urbanization in South India was a direct consequence of Ashokan's southern missions. You know that Ashoka has sent his missionaries to Sri Lanka. Mahavamsha, Dipavamsha books are written. So I will try to fit that logic here and say, because of Ashoka only, this region saw growth and something like that. If you are casually using that logic, you are missing the whole present political context. The whole debate is to, separate that influence and exert that, indigenous identity. You are missing the whole point if you think it's possible. And of course, two different timelines, archaeological evidences. So that is a distraction. Now, I'll say, like some sort of a graffiti or some kind of engraving in the Keeladi site exhibited visual resemblances, but no proven genetic or linguistic link to undeciphered Indus script yet. It remains a hypothesis. Okay, let's say for example, the other kind of a statement is, I'll give half statement right and half statement wrong. Here we have seen a clear evidence of Tamil Brahmi script, and you are saying that there is no script that is deciphered here. It's just symbolism. That's wrong. But the other half is right. What is right? You saying that it is completely unrelated to Indus Valley civilization. It existed even independently. Secondly, the evidence is just taking us back to 600 BC. So half right, half wrong. So is this statement supposed to be included or excluded? Excluded, because half of it is anyway wrong. Now, next, for example, the presence of ring wells indicates advanced water management, a standard signal for 6th century BC urbanization. found across India, similar to northern Mahajanapada sites. This is a commonality between both northern and southern part of the country. And why are we more interested in water management as a metric for good life? Because every civilization, every uh, historically significant group of people, they always lived closer to access to water. If they were not closer to water bodies, they had an alternative arrangement, either in terms of irrigation or wells or some kind of a pond. Otherwise, they wouldn't survive. Okay, so that is one more cue for you to search, like, is there any water in the nearby places? That will help you layer one more, fact into your long-term memory. So it's not like you will sit and mug up everything. It's like logical layers one over the other. Starts with history. Then you add the logic, economy logic or society logic or whatever. And on the top of that, you will add these layers one by one. It's not an activity that will happen in a single sitting. It will take multiple iterations and that will stick in your long-term memory because of that logic. Now, next up, the news is Hoysala temples. What do you know about Hoysala temples? First thing, what would you do if you have to remember a historical event? What is the step number one, like I told you? Map it to a political timeline. Where would you find Hoysala temples? Which time period? First activity is that. Roughly, if not exactly, roughly, where would you find it? 11, 12, 13, somewhere around that region. What geographical region? Karnataka. Point number 2. Why is it in news? UNESCO. So, what is the significance of a site getting UNESCO heritage recognition, or why is it a big deal? Why do we want some global body to give us the tag? Sorry? One is for a very practical reason. You need to conserve this status. You will get some additional recognition and also it would increase the tourism footprint. It has both conservation wise as well as economic wise benefits because it's going to be a great marketing tool for tourism also. Okay. So from a practical standpoint and also from a academic standpoint, you need to understand this, why it is important. Next up, now you are getting into the details. See, you're talking about a time period which already started witnessing the interaction between the northern part and the southern part of the country. And why is Karnataka so volatile in that time period? Because we are seeing a transition between powers. On one hand, you have Rashtrakutas, like you have a tripartite struggle in your history. What is tripartite struggle? The fight between Gurjar Pratiharas, Palas and Rashtrakutas to control which part of the Kannauj. So, after that period, you will see some sort of a political stability. Okay. Where regional powers are consolidated, and you would notice that Hoysalas have actually risen in status. And it is because of that relatively stable political life, you would notice again a revamped emphasis on culture and architecture. And a symbolic representation of that stability and also the grandeur of that time period is this Hoysala. So you would see, because of the fact that there is so much interaction between north and south in the time period preceding that, the natural inclination of that time period would be to bring in the best of both the worlds. That's the reason why you will see Nagara and Dravida architectural elements getting combined. You will also notice that this is already the beginning of the great temple culture, the Dravida culture, where the Chola temples are already starting to see, you know, great status. Brihadishwara is already there. Even the Pallava shore temples, like the initial phases, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, the temple tradition became normal. So already there is a peak. There is expertise, you have manpower, you have, you know, knowledge of how to build extraordinary temples, and you also have a cultural interaction because of the tripartite struggle at that point of time. And because of that cultural mix, you will see a sophisticated blend between the northern and southern part of the country, leading to the Vesara. Now, you see in the Hoysala temples like Halebeedu, this finish is smooth, extraordinarily smooth, black in color, very smooth. And the carvings are so intricate that the detailing that you would notice on those panels, it's very extraordinary that people could do that. Just like in the case of Rashtrakuta Kailasha temple, like a single mountain was carved down into a temple. You would notice here also the amount of sophistication. Like Halebeedu is one place, Khajuraho temples is another. Pressure. Now, in this region, why would you find pressure? Okay. So, what about it? Dharwad Plateau. Like, if you notice, mines and minerals are usually found in which kind of places? Sedimentary or metamorphic? Or igneous? After sedimentation, like layer by layer, if you find that minerals, if they are undergoing some geographical process, like say subduction or some kind of a pressure, that's where you will see those rocks, metamorphic rocks, huge pressure. So I'm asking you to go to that chapter in geography, NCRT, geological history of India, and see how the lineaments in Narmada Plateau region and Dharwad Plateau, Chota Nagpur Plateau have something to do with mines and minerals as well as the materials used in history. It will help you correlate and remember things better. Clear? So here you would find that intricate jewel-like, carvings. That is the takeaway from that. If you have to say the flagship feature that would clearly say that as a marker of Hoysala temple building, it would be the stellite layout. A unique star pattern kind of a thing. You know that star pattern, right? So that's what you should know. Now, there is one more thing that you need to remember. You know who is called Jakanna in the modern times? Do you know who is actually Jakanna? He's the person. So please don't search for Rajamouli's name in the options. The answer is Jakannachari, who was a very prominent sculptor of Hoysala period. Okay. So one more thing I wanted to talk about. Yeah. Who are Vishwakarmas? Who are temple builders? What do you mean by Vishwakarma Sthapati? Any idea? See, you have this recent scheme, Vishwakarma scheme. Artisans. Who are artisans? Who work with their, which includes paintings, sculptures, handloom weavers. Are they eligible under this Vishwakarma scheme? Yes or no? So I'll just raise questions. I don't give answers. Like you go find out. Write down the question. Who are Vishwakarmas? What is Vishwakarma Sthapati? Ever heard this name? See, these are the discussions in news, so associated terms can be asked, but you have to form those associations conceptually. Vishwakarma Sthapati. What does this mean? The scheme, Vishwakarma scheme, and also the ancient sculptors that you can find in PYQs. These are the things that you need to know. Do your research. See, you don't have to find it out today in single sitting. Remember that you will have to link it, because this is in news. This is in news. This is already there in NCRTs and SCRTs, Tamil Nadu. Then you also have previous year question sculptors. Then you have UNESCO site and the mention of this person. So together you need to know all of these ideas to coherently link them. Now, if you have to compare the sites, again, contemporary or more or less in terms of comparison, square or rectangular is the ground plan. Then main tower, it's called Jagati. And Vimana is the name given to the tower in Chola temples. Sculptured on which kind of rock and what kind of style, you can see here. Why is granite used here and soapstone there? Because it's locally available. Sometimes, remember, materials, because the king wanted to ensure that way, materials were brought from elsewhere. Those kind of temples will become again very important because they are exceptions. So if you ever come across, we are only focusing on logic part broadly, like 90% of the cases it will work out. But you will have to remember the 10% exceptions too. So by any chance, if those exceptions fall into your domain or in your experience, remember that. But in my understanding, all such exceptions are already asked in previous year questions. So go through them. So this is the takeaway. Next is Maratha military landscapes. Another important site. Here, understand that the forts of Maratha kings, they were not present just in Maharashtra, they were also present in some other place. Can you tell me where? Tamil Nadu. Do you know just a fun fact? You attribute the word sambar to Tamil, right? Do you know the origin of sambar actually? It's got nothing to do with. It's got nothing to do with. No, it's got nothing to do with Sambar Lake also. Actually, what happened is there was an expedition where Maratha kings traveled all the way from there till Tanjavur. One to the new one, which is inspired or actually the seal of Maratha Navy. How many of you know that Maratha even had a navy? When you look at Indian history, especially in the medieval time period, navy is not the first thing that comes to your mind. But Marathas are known for their prowess in handling naval expeditions. And because of that, if you ever go to, let's say, Chennai, there is this place called St. George Fort, right? There is a museum in that, a naval museum. You will find various kinds of ships. You should sometimes take a route there. Like if you are interested in, you'll find various kinds of ships, and in that, at the entrance itself, they clearly demarcate this. Okay, we have seen a change in the recent official emblem of Indian Navy, thanks to Marathas' prowess in their naval expeditions. But But that's a part of history that we don't know. This is a cue for you to know a bit more about the Maratha culture and the prowess that they contributed to the Indian history beyond the usual Anglo-Maratha wars or the feudatories and their political relations. That's not really going to come in the exam, but I believe that these are important. Okay, so you will see a combination of forts which are on sea, like almost on the seashore, and you will have forts which are embedded within the Sahyadri range, which is like a very strategic point to safeguard their kingdom from external influences. In fact, if you go back to the debates, like very specific debates in the context of 2611 attacks, from that time period only, there were many references to how Mumbai has lost the original warfare tactic of Marathas. Their that was their stronghold. How did it happen? Like, how did we lose that prowess? Was the question raised at that point of time in those discussions. And at that point of time, talking about this Ganimi Kawa, which is their traditional guerrilla warfare technique. Okay. So, if you take a look at the list of sites in the military landscape of Marathas, this is the backstory. So, you wouldn't get the backstory. That's why I gave this backstory. And each of that fort had a different strategic purpose. Based on their location, based on the way it is constructed, they were serving a purpose. Always remember, forts are meant for defense, and defense needs are different in different terrains, and they will be optimized for that specific purpose. Okay, so observe this logic. Next up, you have Sree Narayana Guru, who is known for his contributions to the socio-religious reforms. Vaikom Satyagraha, basically 100th year. You know the background story about this. Just a quick recap. You have Aravipuram, you have the Vaikom Satyagraha, and Sree Narayana Guru Dharma Paripalana Sabha. All of this, the Elava community, from your basic spectrum or any standard textbook, you will get this information. I'm not going to elaborate. But since it is the 100th year, I would want you to go back and revise it. Don't make mistakes in this kind of questions. Clear? Let's move forward. Now, the Piprahwa, relics and Kapilavastu link. See, we have discussed the logic of Mahayana and Hinayana Buddhism. So, if you are talking about relics, if you are talking about stupas, what form of Buddhism is more likely to be dominant there? Hinayana. So, whenever you are talking about Hinayana period, you will definitely notice relics, places of this relics being transformed into stupas, and associated geography, sacred geography of Buddhism. If you go to your 11th class NCERT Fine Arts textbook, you would notice some places where you will see one capitals. See these, when I'm saying capitals, it is not the state capital. I'm talking about the pillars, and on the top of it, you have this. Okay, let's say whatever that, some on the top of that you have capitals, right? Bull capital, lion capital, etc. Those capitals will be placed in important places associated with Buddha. You should know that. Then you will have relics which are immortalized through stupas. Even those stupas are of three different kinds. You can notice that here: Sharirika, Paribhogika, Uddeshika. which are associated, like physical body parts. Let's say, for example, if the ashes are taken and placed there, it is treated as a sacred site, as a mark of respect. You will have some sites there. Paribogika, you will have another kind of items. Let's say, for example, the bowl used by Buddha or something associated. Uddeshika is about some kind of an event that that is associated with Buddha. What happened at Sarnath? He gave his first sermon, like the knowledge was passed on to his followers at this place. So that also commemorated and materialized into a stupa. So you will get this kind of questions too. So the ancient Kapilavastu site, there is a word Kapilavastu, is actually this Piprahwa. And this confirms the logic that Buddha is called Shakya Mahamuni. Why is he called Shakya Mahamuni? Because he belonged to Shakya clan. So this evidence directly maps Buddha to that event. So that's why you should remember this. Okay, write down Piprahwa and Kapilavastu. Like this news is also extremely important. Birsa Munda and Janjatiya Gaurav Divas. See, in Amrit Kal, what do you mean by Amrit Kal? The period between the 75th and the 100th year of independence, we are trying to commemorate the sacrifices of our freedom fighters through initiative like Azadi Ki Amrit Mahotsav. In that larger umbrella, you have this Janjatiya Gaurav Divas, where tribals who contributed to the freedom struggle, who resisted the colonial power, were respected. So, out of all those people, we would notice Birsa Munda as a prominent figure because of his slogan, Jal, Jungle and Zameen. Okay. You would also notice again, like here in the present context, you would also notice some controversies related to religious conversions, related to our article 25, 26, 27. Here you would notice tribals in the heat of this discussion, because religious propagation is a fundamental right but not a conversion. Okay, so in fact there's an accusation that a lot of Christians in the tribal regions are forcibly converted, and this discussion was happening. So they might not directly say this is Christianity or any specific religion, but they can mix this right to religious freedom concept in polity and link it with history. Because if you see a tendency of interdisciplinary questions in mains, it's also possible in prelims too, bringing two unrelated events together. And this is going to be the style of questions going forward. That's the reason I directly picked up that political controversy and placed it with fundamental rights concept. Okay. Then you have Arya Samaj, 150th year, all the basic facts that are associated with it. I don't have to explain. You have all the facts in spectrum. You can go back to that. Pattanamarudur excavations, another important news from southern part of the country. See, again, same logic will be there here. If you compare the various sites of South India, you notice Paleolithic. What are the three lithic sites? Paleo, Meso, Neolithic sites. What about megalithic? Is it about a time period? So is the classification of Paleo, Meso and Neo has got anything to do with megalithic? What is the basis of classification? Investigation, like what was it? Investigation? Sophistication, okay. At that time period, you would see culture evolving with technology. So the flagship identity of that time period is the sophistication in the tool technology. And tools were usually made of stone. So lith stands for stone. Paleo, Meso, Neo represents three different phases of evolution of the technology with respect to our stone tools. Okay. As a parallel, you would also see this word megalith. It usually indicates cultural practice, not scientific. Don't combine both of them. Clear? So, in your NCRTs, you will have a NCRT, new NCRT, there is a map of different sites, Paleolithic, Mesolithic, Neolithic, and in the southern part of the country, the Neolithic sites and also the Paleolithic sites, Adichanallur, for example, Hungsi in Karnataka. These are very important sites. I would want you to go to that NCRT, take out that map, use the sites, club it with something in news, and use them as a basis of comparison. So when you see a site in news, it's not supposed to be read in isolation. Always bring it under the umbrella of already known topics. That point of comparison will make it easy for you. Okay? So you finish all these tasks, and in the next class, we will combine the learnings from this class, like how you got an intro on how to collate different points from different places. You finish, like this is a lot of activity for you to go and revisit this entire news items in the way that we have discussed, try to interlink them. Then we will come back and finish the rest of the issues, because in the second half, we will be talking about ancient ports of India, and it might seem like a very small list, but the underlying geographical logic and the history have so many layers, which will together combine current affairs and the static part, and will help you remember a lot of things. And these points will also be important in the discussions on GS2 international relations, soft power diplomacy. Okay, that's it for the day. See you in the next class.